Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, and most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to provide you with information from the people who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Sonny Sharma, good morning, orange shirt gang, coming in over on YouTube. Carla Isted, good morning to you. She's coming in over on LinkedIn. And I got a very special guest for you guys here today. We're going to talk about improvements that you can make inside of your operations, you guys. As I've been talking about here recently on the show, mid-year point, whether it's quarterly, biannually, you need to look at your processes. You need to look at areas of improvement inside of your business, because sometimes those cost savings are already inside of your business. That additional path to profitability that you're looking for, guess what, is inside of your business already. So I got my man Sean McGillicuddy here with TIE Software on the show to break some things down. Sean, what's going on, man?
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me back, man.
No, dude, it's been a long time. I think it was the TIA conference here in Phoenix was the last time we saw each other, when you guys had like the Taj Mahal of booths that I've ever seen.
Thank you. Yeah, we really put a lot of work into showing up big, and our team put together a great booth and a great showing. So yeah, it feels like that's been a lifetime ago, though. That was a whole quarter ago,
Dude,
quarter and a half ago.
It really has, man. There's been a ton of people. I think a lot of stuff is Sonny wants to know, where's your orange shirt, by the way.
We got orange jackets, Sonny, but I don't have any orange shirts. I can't steal the Freight Coach's polo style.
I think it's the tie style now, man. You guys had that owned at that conference.
That was a big part of having a good presence, good branding,
No, definitely, man. And, I think that, like at this point in the year, and we've been, I've been talking about this on my show, because this is something that I constantly do it's assess my business. Where are things at currently? Where can we find those improvements? Because not everybody can just go out there and raise capital, right? Not everybody can go out there and do what, social media is deceiving, because it's not as easy as some people want to make it seem. And you need to constantly be looking at your guys' operations to find out, where can you free up capital? How can you improve your internal processes? And most importantly, how can you deliver that to your customer? So you guys put together something here recently. I mean, it's literally a step-by-step process for people to follow. And it's one of those things that I was reading this as soon as Vanessa sent this over to me like a month or two ago. I was reading through that. I'm like, yeah, I need to do that. I need to do that as well. And I think like you guys put your clients at the forefront here with this article, and that's what stuck out to me the most with this, because inside, like, how did you guys come up with this list?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a ton of brokers, and we decided that we were finding some areas where there was just major room for improvement, and they were simple areas, right? It wasn't overcomplicated. One of the things that's the toughest to do is kind of step back and give your brain a little bit of a breather to actually try to evaluate some of these areas of your business. But it can be hard to create a whole plan for it. So we found, after talking to tons of brokers over the last few years, we just found some key areas where there was always time savings, right? If you were following a legacy process, or maybe you scaled because you were a really hard worker, or you had a hard working crew, but now you're failing to scale to the next level because you don't have the time savings. We found all these great areas that were just like almost right at the surface. You just needed to slow down, and in some cases just time how long it was taking you. So, yeah. That's how it came about originally.
No, and also I was sent this over. I want to share this on the screen here really quick. There's a QR code. So they created an ebook, you guys, for freight brokers. And I know, because, I see this all over social media as well. about like where do I start? Like how can I even get in business and stuff like that? And inside of this, you guys, I'm going to leave this up on the screen here for a little bit. Use your cell phone, scan this QR code, and this will go directly into this free freight brokerage ebook for people to use, because again, all knowledge is good knowledge, especially when it's coming from people inside of the industry. And this isn't like a course that somebody created because they took a course. This is real practical information out there. And I'll make sure to share that again before we end the show here today. But the top one for me, number one on this, because this is like literally it's an 8-step process, you guys. And Sean, you brought up a good point about you get so caught up in the day-to-day that you don't know where to start. And that's something that I struggle with, because my mentality through everything is act and then I will figure it out. And that works, but it only works to a point, because you need to put plans in place. And one of my biggest weaknesses is I don't write shit down. I have everything inside of my head, but I don't write processes down. And that's where my business partner comes in, because we have a ton of processes and training manuals developed because of him. Otherwise, I'm just more like, hey, I want to act. Let's go. Speed. That's what you're taught in freight broker training. Essentially is it's like you got to reply to your customers quick. You got to reply to your carriers quick. Otherwise, you lose out on stuff.
Right. And so like one of the other parts of how this came about was, most brokers start their business with that mentality, and you need that. You really, really need that in your organization, is the hustle and the go and the motivation. But you do reach a point, and this isn't just true about freight brokerages, but in any business, you do reach a point where you're trying to train people and you can't scale any further, because there's only so much ground you can cover individually, or you as a team. If you have if you started your brokerage with a set of people who all knew exactly what they were doing and they could cover a lot of ground. But you find in any business that once you get to a certain point, you run out of time. And now it becomes like, how do I deploy more people to get this stuff done? And inevitably, you always find that it's really hard to find. You almost have to bring on another partner if you want somebody who can cover all steps, right? But if you want to build a business where you're keeping people busy and they're very efficient, you got to have your process written out. And it is tedious. It's a little boring. I'm not the process guy usually either, as far as documenting the process. But if you force me to slow down, that's where I can come up with the areas that are losing us the most time. We've done the same thing internally here with our marketing and sales process.
No, man. And so I want to lead in with it, because this first one I think it's almost the most important component of a freight brokerage, and that's receiving orders from your clients. I mean, yes, quoting shipments are important. That's going to come here on this list as well, but receiving orders from your clients is crucial, because because not every bill of lading is the same. Not every customer tenders loads over the same. Not every customer reaches out to you in the same manner. That like everybody is different out there. And because it is legitimately money. Every single time an email comes across your way or an order comes, that is money in the bank out there. And if you don't have a process put in place on like a customer by customer basis, I think like that's one of those situations, man, like that's where you should start. One thing that we do, we create customer profiles inside of my operation. Because every single customer reaches out differently. And I need to put that in place, because I can't, whether I'm working or somebody on my team is working, if I'm gone, that customer has to have the exact same experience with my organization literally every single time that we work together.
Yeah. And this is one of the areas where I was saying these are usually pretty simple areas, but if you break it down, you find out, like, I think every broker should know how long it is taking their team on average to return to just receive an email and get it processed, like get it into their TMS or whatever the first stage of their process looks like. How long is it taking? And is it slower than it should be? Is it slower than it would be if you were doing it, right? Like what is slowing them down? And then even worse, how many requests come across that just don't really get seen, like where you could have won them, but you don't know how many exist in your team's inbox, right? So the lack of visibility on that component makes it so that you don't even necessarily know how much opportunity you're missing out on, right? And it's not like every brokerage is different, right? So I can't sit here and say, well, you should definitely do it this way. But what I do think is you should definitely know how long it's taking. Do you have visibility, and how many are you losing on? How many quotes are you responding to that you are losing on or just completely missing? And then if you've got a lot of EDIs going, then are the EDIs faulty, right? Like, are you in any, like, is it taking your team time just to figure out like why something's not transmitting across, right? Like if you've got a large client and they're just sending you orders, are you having to spend any length of time like on the IT side when you're not an IT person, right? So how much time is that taking? Not to mention like when you get into bulk situations where you've got like a spreadsheet of, 300 lanes they want quoted, and now you've got to, like, if data entry is the only way that you have, like, you should definitely look into some different methods because there's a lot of good tech out there to help you with these areas.
No, definitely. We one of our biggest KPIs that we track. I'm not the biggest KPI guy, but one of the biggest things that we track is quotes won. We
Right.
track, if we're sending out 30 quotes in a week and we win 10, we're tracking all of that data. And I had Peter Coratola on my show. He's the founder of Ease Logistics, and he put a stat out there on that podcast episode that, like, I'm striving to get to this point where he has a 2-minute rule where every email is responded to within 2 minutes. And like, no joke, when we were in the planning stage of that episode with him, I was going back and forth with his assistant about scheduling a time, and it was like 8 o'clock Eastern time, Sean, no joke. And I was getting around to emails because I'm on the West Coast. She was still responding within 2 minutes at the time. I'm like, and then he mentioned it on the show, and I was like, holy shit, that is exactly where you need to get. And I think a good first step, again, if you're going to receive orders from your clients, improve your response time to their outreaches. Even if it's a simple, hey, received, we're working on it, I'll get back to you. That will always buy you a couple of minutes in that time. But I would start there, and I would start tracking your KPI and your quotes won, because if you are quoting 100 shipments in a day or a week or whatever that looks like, you want to see what your win rate is. So then you can take that data back to your customers and your prospects and then ask for feedback at that time, right? Where it's like, hey, I saw we quoted 35 shipments last week. We won 3. I just want to see, how are my rates stacking up? I ask for feedback literally almost every single day. Every single opportunity for my customers, I'm asking for feedback. Where do my rates stand? Was it a speed thing? Was it the actual price? Or was it somebody who you have a longer relationship with? They came in comparable, so you gave them the rate. Again, I need to know these things because this is data that is extremely important to me on how I can really roll this out to grow my company.
Yeah, totally. And you got to know if you're where in the pecking order you are, right? Like if you are quoting fast and you're losing, that tells you you can go have a difficult conversation with that client. Like, it seems like we're your number 2 or 3. Like, how do we get into your number 1 slot? Like, we are quick. Like, tell me what we need to do. Just like you said, the feedback, but you need the visibility to know where you're failing.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And that comes up to your guys' second step, which I think it could also have been interjected at number 1, is quoting shipments.
Yeah.
That is truly an art. I think that there's a lot of great data sources that are out there right now. I personally use Green Screens. I'm very fortunate that Green Screen sponsors the show, but I actually use them every single day. And like, there's last week, I think on my show, they were like $7 difference between what they said I was going to pay and what I actually ended up paying on the load. But, again, quoting shipments, speed to quoting is huge, because, before we got on the air, we were talking, and I'm like, there's situations right now where I will provide a rate within 2 minutes sometimes to my customers, and the load's already covered. Like, you need to know how to really work these situations, because, again, every customer is different. I also have some customers where speed's not necessarily a thing. They're just looking for the best price on that shipment. So that quoting window might be open for 30 minutes, or they have a target rate. And whenever that target rate has been hit, they tender the load at that time. So I think when you're going out there, you have to be competitive on your quotes right now. But, also it's like, where is the accuracy of it? Where are you in line with that? Kind of like what we were talking about a little bit ago. Are you asking for that feedback?
Yeah. And it becomes, what we find a lot is you have a pricing specialist, or maybe there's a few guys that are pretty seasoned, right? And you're ending up, one of the things you should ask yourself as a brokerage is, like, do we have data? Do we have a way to respond with a quote quickly? Or are we having to be, I see this still too often, where it's like posted on the load boards. We don't even know which carriers have run this for us regularly. We can't look at that data. We don't have a way to see it. So we're posting on the load boards and waiting until we get a quote back, and then we're responding. And if that's the case, that's a lot of time wasted to probably lose. Right.
Yes.
Now, it's one thing if it's a more committed customer and you can kind of take your time, find the best price. That's kind of what they're coming to you for if you have that relationship. But inevitably, any brokerage that's trying to grow, no matter what size they are, if they're in growth mode or they've got a segment they're trying to grow on, you're going to be in the spot quote market. You're going to be trying to win new clients that you got your foot in the door with, and then you're trying to show them that you can be quick, you can provide a good service and good pricing. And so if your whole process is taking too long, you're just wasting money, right? And I think green screens is a great example of how you can set your team up for success. Like, so if you've got, I see this way too often, even in larger brokerages where you've got some guy who's been doing this forever. And if you were to introduce something like a green screens or another technology, they're almost a little annoyed by it because they're like, well, I've been doing it this way forever. And they are, to be fair to them, they are fast, right? They've got it all in their head. Their brain works this way. They've been doing it for 15 years, right? And they know how to respond quickly. But what happens if that person needs to go on vacation? Or what happens if they want to retire or anything else like that, right? What do you have in place that allows the rest of your team to see what the seasoned guy would do? And one of the things that is the best thing you can do is take a data source like green screens and be able to compare that to your lane average, and then be able to even drill down into your most recent quotes and from carriers to find out what the price should be. That gives you scalability. Like, so even if you don't necessarily want to trust everybody in your brokerage to price on their own, because that does happen. Like, like they don't necessarily want to empower everybody to put the rate on, but don't you at least want to be able to start training people to make the right moves like the seasoned guy? And it's really hard to do that if you never create a process that involves aggregating data and being able to respond quickly. Then as soon as that pricing specialist leaves your organization, or you want to grow and their bandwidth is restrained, you're dependent on finding somebody that's just as experienced, right? And just as expensive, right? And it's competitive. There's only so many of those guys out there, right? So if you want to take somebody who's maybe young and hungry and be able to train them on how to price appropriately, it's pretty nice if you've got all these data sources on one screen and you can look at them quickly. But you can't really win especially if the market starts to shift next year and we're seeing more spot quotes and capacity tightens up more and things like that. You just can't be this slow. You have to be able to, like you were saying, if you can respond in 2 minutes, you were saying before we even got on, you could still lose, right? Like they could still already have it covered in a 2-minute response. But imagine if it's taking you 20, right? So and these go together, right? Like you said, so if you're receiving orders and you're not seeing them for a long time because you're in your inbox, took you 10 minutes to even get to it, and then it takes you another 10, 20 minutes to get a number on it and then respond, 30 minutes, you're not winning most of those quotes. Like if you knew your win ratio, you would probably find that you're not winning most of those quotes and you're throwing a lot of money down the drain because you're paying people to get that going for you.
No, I agree, man. And, and then on top of that, on your next one is how are you covering your loads? Because I think like right now it's very easy for people to find coverage for their freight. But, again, you guys, I actually walk this walk. I don't just sit up here and have a pretty face, which I do, but I'm actually covering loads as well, you guys. And, for example, I won 6 shipments on the exact same lane from my customer moving this week. My goal is to have it down to 2 carriers that we've worked with that are going to do all of these, and I'm pre-booking them with them. I'm not going out to a load board. I found carriers that we can trust and we can utilize on them because my carrier network is everything. I don't have a business unless I have a strong carrier network. And, back to what you were saying earlier about quoting for loads too, if your strategy is just to post shit, you guys, it might work right now. It's going to work in the short term. All right. I'm not going to sit here and say that because I'm not anti-load boards at all. How else do you develop capacity? But if you're going to look for long-term sustainable options for your customer, you need to assess your carrier network. You need to assess how are you covering these loads, because at the end of the day, you guys, today's market isn't going to last forever. Shout out to Sonny here. He says broker carrier is a great tool. It makes covering your loads, excuse me, so you don't have to post them on a load board. And that's the whole point, you guys, is load boards are great to a point. And then when you have those trusted carrier partners developed, it should just be boom, auto tender them out to them at all times, because your carrier sales reps should be selling that capacity to them at all times.
Yeah. And I actually think this is the biggest area to focus on. If you're, if things are a little slower than you'd like them to be, and you are posting to the load boards and you're not aggregating the data from the load boards to know who you could go back to, right? Because maybe you don't even have a network of carriers on a particular lane. Like maybe you're newer, or maybe you're branching into an area where you won a new client, or you have the prospect of winning a new client that runs on some lanes that you don't frequently run, right? So you have to post. And that's good. We're lucky. I had a post the other day on LinkedIn. We're lucky to have load boards as an industry. I mean, it's awesome. Like the way that we're able to connect. But if your team is overly reliant on the load boards and you're kind of coming to them and you're going, guys, I said, stop posting on the load boards, go back to the carriers we want to work with. That's great as an idea, but what's their process? Like, is the process actually easier for them to post on the load board and you've got everything kind of all over the place and they don't have an easy way to see the set of carriers you want them working with, or your favorite carriers? Then they're going to end up posting. And when you come to them and go, hey, I told you not to post, they're going to go, dude, I got the load covered, man. Like, they're just, because you've made it so that it's hard for them it feels like everything's far away. Right. Yeah. So you need a way to aggregate all that information so that you can see who does run this lane most frequently for me, who is the most reliable, who are the top carriers that I'm trying to build better relationships with. If you don't have an easy way for your whole team to see that, they're all going to have their own little process. And this is pretty common within brokerages that kind of grew up from, grassroots, hardworking, right? Like, where they've done really good, but now they're at that point where they're hiring people and everybody's kind of got their own process. And it becomes tough to, like, if you and I are working together, Chris, I feel like I should know, if I get a new client that runs on some lanes that you know really well and you've got carriers for, what could be better for our brokerage than if I also gave those carriers some additional loads, right? Especially on the lanes that they want to run. And there's no better way to build a relationship with a carrier than to give them the freight that they want and be fair on the price, right? And so if you understand what the market is and what other carriers you have in that network and the ones that are really reliable, you can pick up the phone and start having better relationships with them. But, if you're just posting on load boards and you're just in that cycle, like the hamster wheel of just getting loads posted, covered off the load boards, no matter what, you're just never really going to get to that level where you've got a network that can get you through any market. Right.
Yeah. No, dude, I agree on that. And then, because again, like, this is all you guys, if you haven't identified this yet, there's a system behind all of this. And this is a system that I follow on literally every single shipment that I move inside of my organization. And number 4 and number 5, I think, are almost one and the same, because it's track and trace your loads and then updating your clients. And I'm going to kind of combine these, because these are two very separate steps, but I'm going to combine them here because, with track and trace, for example, like, I have loads that we're moving every single day. If my driver's on tracking, I'm not wearing him out. All right. If he's driving and I see that there's moving, or if he stops in the same spot for like 2 straight hours, maybe I will reach out. Hey, is everything okay? But again, if they're on tracking, I'm not wearing these guys out. I do not want that. I establish phone call with them. They have my number, and I will always say this: hey, let me know if you need anything. And then there's, like, with certain tracking platforms that are out there, you can set up auto updates to your customer. Okay, so every single time that driver pings, an update goes through. Now, I understand not every customer wants that coming through. So we set it up to where it's like, I always send so we picked up a load yesterday in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's going out to Texas. I let my customer know this morning. I checked tracking. I've been working with this driver for 4 straight weeks, you guys. So we got a system down with them. But driver who's in Louisiana, first thing I did this morning, I updated my customer on that load. Hey, drivers in Louisiana, 560 miles away, still tracking on time for the delivery tomorrow. Let us know if you need anything. Boom, done. On to the next one. All right. You guys, you got to build these systems up on this, and you utilize technology. If you don't have the manpower, all right, you can do this now to where it will be an automated message that goes through. I'm sure there's a rule that you can create in maybe in Thai. You can hey, send this one update a day to your customer on location updates.
Yeah. Well, and you can even, within Thai, we can scrape the email spot. Like, for those clients that don't want an update on every turn, right? Yeah. They just want, give me an update when I ask. We can auto respond to those with the data. But this is another area where if you time your team on how long it takes them to do track and trace, or how much time they're spending per day on it, this is one of the biggest and most simple areas to save a bunch of time, especially if you've got a cradle to grave model where the same guy who's taking care of the customer is also covering the loads and doing all this track and trace by himself. He might be spending hours a day just trying to get updates on trucks. And what, if that person is salesy at all or good at taking care of the customer, why wouldn't we want to free up a couple of hours, right? If it's really simple to do that. So I always recommend like timing your team on this, because there's tons of tracking software. Most of that tracking software should integrate with your TMS. And then there's texting features, right? Like we have a native texting feature, but there's other things on the market if you're not using Ty. And to make it so that if you can't get the tracking in real time from like a Trucker Tools or a Macro Point or something like that, then you got to be able to blast out text messages. You still inevitably will have carriers that you've got to call, but you got to find a way to reduce the time spent. And if you have that data inside of your TMS, then it should be super easy to get those updates to clients. So if a client is asking for updates regularly and it's taking you really long to respond, you should know. You should know how long it takes you on average to get these quick responses to clients, because it makes them feel more taken care of, right? It makes it feel like the brokerage is providing a really top tier service when they're just looking for an update and you get it to them quickly. If they're same thing as the receiving orders, if those things are living in your inbox, those requests are living in your inbox and you're not responding quickly, or you don't even know how many you missed, right? That's bad, right? So you have to be able to ask those tough questions to your staff and dig into like, how long is it taking us and are we missing any? Because we're not providing a top tier service if we are.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then another thing about you not providing a top tier services is number 6 and that's gathering paperwork, right? And this is another process, you guys. I want you to, like, if you're having struggle tracking down PODs and BOLs, I'm going to brag on my organization because we dominate this. And we do that because from the very first phone call we have with the dispatcher and the driver, they are aware as soon as that driver's delivered, we need a picture of the POD. Location update. Hey man, just a heads up, when you get there, we need a picture of that POD. We remind them 6 or 7 times out there, and then especially day of delivery. Hey, when they check in, perfect, just send me a snapshot of that POD when you're delivered. We got to get that up there, you guys, because again, if you improve the gathering paperwork phase of it, you're going to ultimately improve your invoicing, which is number 7 on this list. And I'm going to kind of blend these two as well, because your cash flow is everything. Getting your carriers paid fast is a major value add. And, not every customer has 90-day pay terms or stuff like that. There's some customers who have a rolling, hey, if you invoice us by Thursday of this week, you will get paid the following week. So then you can go out there and you can pay your people faster. I think 6 and 7 ultimately are the main differentiator between if you can become a top provider for your customers, is if you can get your paperwork and invoice them quickly and efficiently. That is how you move up the pecking order with your shippers.
Yeah. And you could even throw in that carrier bill audit part, because there are like with the 3 of them together, because they do go together, because it can take forever to gather all the paperwork. You got to find a faster and easier and more cost-effective way to do that. Because in some brokerages, you have a whole job dedicated to just gathering paperwork if you're doing enough business. And if you don't have a way to scale that, then you're limited to just labor, right? Now you could nearshore it too. That's been pretty big in some of these types of situations, which is a good cost saver. But there's also quite a bit of technology out there to help you gather and sort the paperwork so that the audit process is nice and simple, and in some cases, in our case, automated, right? And then that makes it so that you can invoice faster. So you get your carrier paid faster, and hopefully you get paid faster, because when you invoice them quickly, and you're not missing a piece of information that they need in order to get you paid. And like you said, cash flow is absolute king in a freight brokerage. You can't let your cash flow get out of control.
I think, again, it's building these processes up, going back to literally number 1 on this list, you guys, when you're receiving orders from your customers, what does that process look like? What does the life cycle of that shipment look like inside of your organization? How do you find those areas of improvement? Sean, you brought up a great point about timing your people. All right. Because a lot of these things, you need to shorten the amount of time that you guys put into some of these things. Less talk. See, this is where somebody like me really excels, because like I'm about like act, think secondly. That's kind of my MO with a lot of these things. And it tends to work out for the most part. And I think, like, again, you got to look at these things. You got to assess your processes throughout the year. We could have talked about this for like 3 hours, Sean, and really broke this down. But you guys, like, Ty has this out there on their website. It's just ty-software.com/8-areas-of improvement. I put the link out there as well. You guys check this stuff out. You guys, this is public information that you guys should be looking at. And then again, if you guys want this book, you guys, again, here's that QR code. If you're watching this on the replay right now, or if you're watching this or listening to this on the iTunes or Spotify audio only replay later, go to the YouTube channel, you guys, and you guys can find this book out there. You guys, there's a ton of free resources for you guys to utilize to find improvements in your business, because it's not always adding more customers. Sometimes it's going to come from the inefficiencies inside of your organization already. That's where all the additional revenue can sometimes come from.
Yeah. Chris, thanks again for having me. If anybody wants more information on it, if you want to ping me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to talk about any of these areas. I do think if all 8 areas are a problem for your organization, then the good news is there's a ton of time savings within each of those steps.
Yes.
In often cases, it may be only 3 of them that are actually areas of improvement for you. But that's the goal, is to give everybody a bunch of simple areas to look into.
No, that's exactly it, you guys. I mean, we're essentially at the halfway point of the year right now. You need to be taking stock of your P&L, your processes, and everything to look out there. Because again, like I say in the sales process, for me, it's the 3 Ps. Patience paired with persistence is going to lead to profits. You guys, you need to be looking at your P&L right now. You need to look, where can you guys increase your efficiencies out there? Stress test your team right now. Stress test your processes. Make sure they're running as efficiently as possible, because that's what's going to really help elevate your organization. And as always, you guys, if you guys can't find Ty for some reason, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with them. But that's going to be it for tomorrow, you guys. We have a guest coming on tomorrow as well. Again, we're going to keep bringing these rapid fire sessions to you guys, because again, this is how we educate people in the industry and help improve your businesses. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard today, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. Dang, that was a banger of an episode, Sean. We really
Right on.
out there, man. That was perfect.